Firstly, thanks very much for taking us some time and your to give some insights into various aspects of Mandir and obviously your own journey, your own spiritual journey as a sadhu. So, it's the first thing I want to start off with is something quite open and broad, which is if you could tell me a bit about um, your upbringing, where you were born, and ultimately from the journey as a child in the Swaminarayan community, what inspired you eventually to become a sadhu as well?
Okay, so I was born and brought up in Leicester, and I became more affiliated with the Swaminarayan community at the age of 16. I went through my studies. At that time we had O levels, then A levels. I studied medicine. After qualifying, I practiced for a short while. And then at the age of 28 in 1992, I made a decision to be initiated as a sadhu. Or I presented myself for an initiation. So in our organization, our tradition, anyone who wishes to renounce and take these robes, they have to go through, first of all, they have to be a certain, they have to be totally sure that they want to take this path. They have to have the blessings of their parents. They have to have the blessings of our Guru, who at that time was His Holiness Pramukh Sai Maharaj, the creator of this mandir here in Neasden. So with the blessings of my Guru, with the blessings of my parents, I went to India in 1992. And then we go through a very, at that time it was 1 year training period before we actually get initiated, pre-initiation period, which helps us to understand what the life of a sadhu is, the monastic life, to see how we are suited to that life, because it is a commitment, a difficult commitment. And once we are sure, and our spiritual teacher, the Guru, is sure, our seniors also guide us, then we are accepted for initiation. So with the blessings of our Guru Pramukh Sai Maharaj, he initiated me in 1992. Just like we have a traditional temple here in Neasden, in Gandhinagar, the capital of Gujarat, we have a traditional mandir, but a different type of mandir. It's an exhibition, it's a monument, and dedicated to Lord Swaminarayan. When that Swaminarayan Akshardham was opened in Gandhinagar in 1992, 80 of us received initiation as sadhus, and I was part of that group.
Can I just go a step back? You were telling that you were born in Leicester. Were your family part of Swaminarayan belief? Or how did you get involved?
So we were born as Hindus, Gujarati Hindus. Family was initially from Gujarat in India. Initially, we weren't Swaminarayan Hindus, but then with time, the family became Swaminarayan devotees. And in 1980, when our Guru Pramukh Swamiji visited Leicester, that's the first time I met the Guruji. And I was 16 years old at the time. So from that time, I slowly developed affiliation with the Swaminarayan tradition in 1980.
And what was your what were you looking for with a 60-year-old?
Okay, so it was all very new to me at that time. So we had no wish at that time to take up these robes. But slowly, as I got more involved into the community, helping out in the local temple in Leicester, doing service, what we call seva, and generally getting more involved in spiritual practices, I was drawn to this spiritual life. So I spoke to our Guruji at that time as well. And he also said, look, it's your own decision. We don't force anyone to take this path. If you're comfortable with it, then you have our blessings. So it was a gradual process. So as you can see, I first entered the community in 1980. I left home in 1992. So it was a 12-year process. And I felt that this is something for me. So then I took up the chance to go to India to take initiation. Yeah, it was a gradual process over 12 years. And when I was absolutely sure, and we had the blessings of our parents as well, and our spiritual leader, we went to India. And at that time, as I said, you have to go through, it's 6 months to a year training, pre-initiation. And then I was accepted for initiation in 1992.
Was it not also a personal commitment? You know, it was, of course, believing in something is one thing,
Yeah.
but become a monk is quite something else.
Yeah, it's a personal commitment because spiritually we want to do what's best for our soul. And there's many different paths, especially in Hinduism. It's not all in black and white, but in our tradition, in our community, the two broad paths are you either take the role of renouncing the world, which very few individuals actually do, and the majority will be what we call grahastas or householders. They can also offer devotion, they can also offer service, and they can also attain the same spiritual qualification that someone who may have renounced the world, someone who is a sadhu or a monk, they can attain. But our life is a life more of discipline, and despite staying, we don't like take ourselves to the forest and then go in seclusion. We stay within the community, but at the same time we do what we call our own personal sadhana, our spiritual endeavors, to try to control our minds, to try to make sure that we are disciplined in every aspect of our lives. So that sadhana or spiritual endeavor is always there. At the same time, our role is also trying to interact with our devotees, helping them, guiding them, acting as doing pastoral counseling to all our devotees, whoever may have issues or not. Anything they require guidance on, matters of morality or spirituality, we can hopefully provide that to our devotees.
We go there in detail.
Okay.
Just we were talking about the education you had before you had a religious education. You had also a secular education.
Yeah. You want me to talk about the education? Okay, as I mentioned, I was born in Leicester. So I went through the usual, I was in primary school for something like 6 years. Then at that time we had grammar schools. So fortunately I passed the 11 plus. So I went to a grammar school in Leicester. It was actually the final year that we had grammar schools. So I was fortunate. If I was born 2 months later, then I probably wouldn't have, the 11 plus had been abolished by then. So I went to a grammar school, did O-levels at that time, the equivalent of what we have GCSEs today. So I must have done, I think, something like 11 O-levels. Then I did A-levels, and then I went on to study medicine at the University of Leicester. That was a 5-year course. After studying, then worked in hospitals in and around Leicester for about 4 years, till 1991. And then in 1992, as I mentioned, that I went to India. Is that detailed enough?
That's detailed.
Okay. So that was our education.
Yeah. And then the second part of education, which is a spiritual education, happened in India. Can you explain where you were and the details of education there?
Okay, as I mentioned that 1 year before initiation, we have a pre-initiation training session, training or education. So that was very basic education on what the Swaminarayan community or the Swaminarayan tradition is, and also our Hindu faith. And then we all spend 5 years in a place called Sarangpur. We have quite a big temple there in Sarangpur, which is about 250 or 200 to 250 kilometers from Ahmedabad. the former capital city of Gujarat. So in Saharanpur, it's like an ashram atmosphere. There's a temple, it's actually a village. There's about 200 to 300 sadhus at any one time. And in that atmosphere, we are spiritually trained. So number one, we have education. So we study our scriptures, our Hindu scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Srimad Bhagavad Puran. And we also study scriptures which are specific to the Swaminarayan tradition, the Vachanamrit, which are the sermons of Lord Swaminarayan. We also have basic studies in the world religions, so we understand how people of different faiths, what they believe in, how they may lead their lives as well, so we can also learn from them and also understand how they worship God or how they want to move ahead in the spiritual path. And we also studied Sanskrit, ancient language, which is the language of the scriptures. And learning Sanskrit also not only helped us to understand the scriptures, but also helped us to understand Gujarati, which is our mother tongue, and also helped us in many other different ways as well. So in addition to that education over those 5 years in this place called Saharanpur, it's not just about studies, or it's not just about education, but it's also about making sure that we are prepared in a different variety of fields. So as sadhus, we may be doing many different things. We may be looking after the congregation. Some people may be looking after the adult population. Some people may be looking after the children. Some people may be looking after the deities. So to prepare ourselves for any seva, any service, which may come our way in the future, it wasn't fixed when I became, or when we were trained that we'll be returning to London again or coming to a Western country. We may have to stay in India for the rest of our lives. We may go to any other place around the world. So we're prepared to do a wide variety of service, which would help us wherever we would be, whatever service would be assigned to us in the future. So that's what we did during those 5 years. One of the things is, in addition to studying, listening to discourses, we would also engage ourselves in different types of service. It may be sweeping the floor, maybe cleaning the walls, maybe preparing food in the kitchen, maybe preparing the deities for daily worship. So all these different types of service we were prepared for and trained in those fields during our 5 years in India.
And the ordination, is it at the end of this process or is it in the middle somewhere?
No, the ordination, the actual initiation happened, as I said, after 1 year. So the pre-initiation period is 1 year. Now it's actually 3 years. So that's the time you decide that this path is the path for yourself. Some people may think it's a bit difficult, or some people may think this path is not for them. Then they continue with whatever they were doing before they went to India. And if you feel you're ready for this path and you have the blessings of the seniors, then that ordination happens as a special ceremony in which our senior Swamis are there. And then the head Swami, the Guru, Pramukh Swamiji, he gives you your mantra and he initiates you officially in these robes.
And you said it's for some boys quite difficult.
Yeah.
What was the most difficult thing for you?
For myself, maybe due to God's grace, it wasn't that difficult for myself. But some people may find it difficult to physically just set in the environment in India. Weather is different. You may fall ill more frequently than you may fall here. And some people may find it very difficult. It's a cultural shock as well. Especially, most people have been before, but it is to stay continuously there, and at that time it's a lifetime commitment, and we didn't know that we're going to come back here. We're going to stay in India for the rest of our lives, so it can be a cultural shock. So physically it may be difficult for some people. Mentally as well, you have to train your mind. I'm not saying we're perfect, but it's a lifelong process. So we have to make sure that we can control our minds, train our minds, educate our minds, so that number one, we are not tempted. And number two, we can also achieve discipline in whatever aspect of life we may be engaging in.
You know, from us coming from a Western perspective, I spent a long time in India, so I'm well aware.
Oh, you've been to India, okay.
Yes, many times, many times. But for us, what is interesting is the idea of creating a family, maintaining a family is very important especially in the Gujaratis, but also any other communities in India. So, but of course you are deciding, I don't want to have a family because it's a path differently.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? How did you feel at the time?
Okay, so when we take this path, our spiritual leader, Pramukh Swamiji, he also told us that you came from a small family and now your family has increased, 1,000-fold or tens of thousand-fold, because all these devotees, they are your family. All the women are your mothers, all the gents are your fathers, these children are your children. So it's not literal, but obviously we go from a small family to a much, much larger family, because as I mentioned, we're not secluded in the forests, we're living in a community, we interact with people, so it's not like we're missing anything. So we've become part of a much, much, much larger family. That's how our Guru used to teach us, and that's also what we've experienced as well, that all these devotees are our family members.
And you finished your education in India? And
Yeah.
What happened then?
So normally you spend about 4 or 5 years in the ashram in Sarangpur, and then in our organization we have the spiritual guru. There's also some senior swamis who have also overseen our education, our training, and some of those swamis are also based at the ashram, at the temple in Sarangpur. So at the end of your time, 4 or 5 years of education, the seniors will also discuss with our spiritual guru, and then ultimately the decision is made by the spiritual guru that, depending on requirements around the world, that this Swami would be best placed to go to this place. This Swami would be best placed to go to this temple. So then that happened in Sarangpur in 1997, and then I was told that you need to go to London. Some people may have been told that you stay in India, you go to USA, you go to Canada, you go to Africa, whatever. Since this temple was opened in 1995, that's the first time that Swamis actually were placed or stationed anywhere outside India. So until 1995, all the Swamis, all the sadhus, were only serving in different temples in India or different schools in India, depending on what their seva or service was. But since 1995, some sadhus were stationed here, and the same thing happened in America in 1996. So we were assigned to come here with the blessings of our spiritual guru.
You came back from India to the UK after many
Yeah.
years, actually.
After 5 years.
You had another cultural shock.
Not really. First of all, we were a bit disappointed that we were actually leaving India, because the spiritual guru spent most of his time in India. So we wouldn't be seeing him as often as we would have liked. So it was a bit of a disappointment that then we were actually told to come here. But our sadhana, our spiritual endeavor is to follow the wishes of the guru, to fall into his line and to align ourselves with his instructions. So with his blessings we came here. It wasn't really a cultural shock because we obviously stayed here. It was a bit different living in this atmosphere with the temple here, and we came from a relatively small community in Leicester. The community in London here is much, much bigger, and obviously this is the headquarters for the whole of the activities of the Swaminarayan community in the whole of UK and Europe. So a much larger congregation, many more devotees, but it wasn't really a shock. We got used to it and just carried on and just tried to do what we were told to do.
Were you the first, the only monk at the time, or were there several of them? How was it?
No, there were
At the
several
beginning?
monks because, as I mentioned, in 1995, see, at the moment we have around probably just over 1,000 sadhus, swamis, in our particular organization, the BAPS Swaminarayan organization, worldwide. So at the moment there are 20 monks or sadhus in London. In 1995, when the temple was opened, Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he kept around 10 monks here in London to look after the day-to-day needs of the temple here and the needs of the congregation.
And he was the most senior monk at the time?
No, I wasn't.
No, he, the Pramukh.
Pramukh Swamiji is the guru. So Pramukh Swami Maharaj is a spiritual guru. So he is the head, or was the head, of the organization before his passing in 2016. So he is the inspirer, the creator of this mandir. He is the inspirer of all of us. He's given us blessings. He's inspired actually us to take this path, because without the Guru's grace, we believe that we cannot achieve anything. So Pramukh Swami Maharaj in 1995, he made the decision to keep monks outside India for the very first time. So he placed around 10 monks here in 1995. We joined in 1997. So we weren't the first batch of sadhus or monks that were placed in London.
I think it was a big change from what you said, coming in from an institution into a completely new place.
Yeah.
How to arrange things, and especially the first place in a Western country, What were the difficulties at the time?
When we were...
When you first started here, with the other monks.
The other monks.
Together.
So the first batch, as I mentioned, was in 1995. I came 2 years later in 1997. So for the first batch, it was probably more difficult because it was the first time outside India. They would be away from our Guru for quite a length of time. But the Guru did come here every 1 or 2 years anyway, so it wasn't that difficult. But because it was new, it wasn't in India. But with God's grace, everyone set in, and because you had the temple, it was like creating India back at home here in the UK. So then when 2 years later we were stationed here, it was much, much easier for us as well. There were already 10 sadhus here. Another 4 or 5 of us were added. So there was about 15 of us at that time.
Can you explain a little bit about the relationship between the monks? Is there a hierarchy between them? And if yes, maybe can you explain about that?
The hierarchy is like there's usually one monk who is in charge, one Swami. So when we came here, there was another Swami in charge. His name was Atma Swarup Swami. He was a senior Swami who was placed there in 1995. And he was the head Swami of this mandir, the head Swami for all the activities in UK and Europe for 10 years until 2005. So under him, there were, as I mentioned, 10 to 15 of us serving in different fields. We would go to different temples across the country. We would go and give discourses at different centers where there may not be temples, but where assemblies may be held every week or every month, all around the UK, sometimes also on the continent in Europe. Wherever our devotees are, or wherever there's a demand, Gujaratis or Hindus, and they want to hear the Swami speak, then we would go there to speak. So the head Swami, Atma Swarup Swami, would instruct us that, this is where you need to go, or the sadhus, someone is looking after the kitchen, someone's looking after the children, someone's looking after, say, some other department, someone's looking after the deities. We would all take our instructions from the head Swami. So he's at the top, and the rest of the Swamis, some may be older than the others, but there was one head Swami who was in charge, and we would abide by his instructions and take orders from him.
shall we now move maybe more general about the belief system? And you
Okay.
were already talking about Hinduism. Maybe you start with Hinduism. What is Swaminarayan and what's the difference to Hinduism?
Okay, so
is there-
Hinduism is a vast ocean,
Yes.
a vast belief system, not one scripture, not one founder, not even one core belief. But Hinduism has many, say, there are some core beliefs which have to be adhered to if you want to be classified as a Hindu. So our particular branch, Hinduism has many, many branches. Our particular branch of Hinduism is the Swaminarayan branch. It is not separate from Hinduism. Other religions may have evolved from Hinduism, like Buddhism or Sikhism and even Jainism. So they have actually, even though they may have evolved or have their roots in Hinduism, they have split to become different faith systems in themselves. Swaminarayan Hinduism is part and parcel of Hinduism. It's not split, and it will never split because it was based on the core principles given by Bhagwan Swaminarayan, who was born on this earth in 1781, 239 years ago. And all his teachings were based on our Hindu sastras or Hindu scriptures. And what Lord Swaminarayan did was what's written in the scriptures, what people may have deviated from over time, which is only but natural. He tried to teach or inspire the practice of Hinduism in its purest form. So he taught that Hinduism is not just about preaching. Hinduism is not just about rituals. Hinduism is about making sure that our life is full of character, full of dharma. And with that pure character, with those pure thoughts, one should offer devotion to God. So we are a devotional community. Some Hindus may choose to focus on Gnan, which is knowledge. Some may choose to focus on karma, action. Some may choose to focus on pure service to the community. Don't worry about God. Serve the people, it's the same as serving God. And some may choose to focus on devotion. So what Lord Swaminarayan taught was our major focus is devotion. But that devotion must come with a pure heart and from trying to lead a pure life, free of addictions, free of bad intentions, and offer devotion to God. And Lord Swaminarayan also taught that devotion is not just about sitting in front of the deities and singing devotional hymns or offering discourses. Devotion, anything you do with the intention of serving God or pleasing God is devotion. So me speaking to you today is also, for me, an act of devotion. Me sweeping the floor, me going out to speak to devotees, or me going out to the community and helping poor people or whatever it might be, that is all counted as devotion, if done with the right intent and with the right heart. So that's what Lord Swaminarayan taught his followers. So ours is a devotional community, and our aim, that's how Swaminarayan Hinduism fits in the bigger scheme of things.
Can you explain how it came into being, this specific branch of Hinduism? Was it based on Bhaktism, the Vaishnava movement?
Swaminarayan community, you have been to Gujarat? You've been to, whereabouts have you been in Gujarat?
Mainly Kutch, but also Baroda.
Kutch, Baroda. Okay. So Swaminarayan Hinduism is not based on Vaishnavism, but as I mentioned, it has a focus on bhakti or devotion. So Vaishnavism is very similar it is also based on devotion or bhakti. So in that way, Swaminarayan and Vaishnavas have a lot in common. Some of the teachings of Lord Swaminarayan also are based on some of the Vaishnava practices. Because at the end of the day, you have a temple, you have the sacred images, the murtis, and you offer devotion to God. Devotion can be performing the arti, it can be offering food to God, putting God to sleep, treating God as a real person. So many of those practices are common. You can't say they originated in Vaishnavism, but they're common to Vaishnavism, to the Swaminarayan community as well, and to maybe many other communities as well. But the focus is on bhakti. So as I mentioned, Lord Swaminarayan, he was born in 1781, and he started the movement at the age of around 19 or 20 in Gujarat. He stayed in Gujarat for 30 years. That's where his focus was. And he built 6 mandirs, temples. He gave us certain scriptures based on our Hindu sastras. But the core basis was devotion. If you want me to explain in a bit more detail, I can. Bhakti is devotion. So Bhagwan Swaminarayan explained that our goal in life is to offer devotion to God in this life and also the afterlife. But that devotion is coupled with what we call dharma, gnan, and vairagya. 3 things. So dharma is following the religious code of conduct. Gnan is having the right knowledge of the soul, Atma, and God, Paramatma. So dharma, gnan, vairagya. Live in the world, but remain detached from the world, knowing that one day we're not going to stay here forever, we'll be gone. So dharma, gnan, vairagya, with these 3, coupled with devotion, that's what our ultimate aim of life should be. Dharma, gnan, vairagya, and bhakti, devotion. That's what Lord Swaminarayan taught. And then in our philosophy, because Lord Swaminarayan, he stayed until the age of 49, there have been different branches of Swaminarayan Hinduism as well. So in our belief system, what we call the Akshar Purushottam darshan or belief system, Lord Swaminarayan taught that this dharma, gnan, vairagya, bhakti, what we class as ekantik dharma, is sustained through the presence of a living guru. So in the tradition of Lord Swaminarayan, a guru, a living guru, has continued the work of Lord Swaminarayan. So there was Guru number 1, 2, 3, 4. Guru number 5 was Pramukh Sai Maharaj, who was our Guru, the creator of this mandir. He passed away in 2016. And the current Guru is Mahan Swami Maharaj. So we believe the teachings of Lord Swaminarayan are continued by the living Guru, who continues to preach the message of Lord Swaminarayan, inspiring thousands of people towards this way of living. That's our Swaminarayan belief system.
So you were already talking about the community. Of course, the temple, your work is dedicated to the community. Can you talk about the community?
Okay, the community, while this mandir is a Hindu temple and made predominantly for Hindus, there are also, but the temple is open to everyone. So Hindus or non-Hindus, some Hindus may be from Gujarat. The majority of the Hindus that come here are from Gujarat, but not exclusively so. Many are from North India, many are from South India or other places in India as well. Also, as I mentioned, non-Hindus come to visit the temple. So the whole community, the wider community is our community. We will serve or aim to serve whoever comes to us. We don't go out actively to convert anyone to Hinduism. But those that are already Hindus or those that may be following the Swaminarayan tradition, we will obviously try to help them to progress on the path of spirituality. So that is our community. The community gathers especially on Saturdays and Sundays here at the temple, but also if it's a festival day on a weekday, they will also gather here. And we split our activities into age groups. So different swamis or different volunteers will be responsible for activities for the toddlers, activities for children up to the age of 13, teenagers up to the age of 21, 22, and then the youths up to the age of 40, and then 40 plus are what we call the senior adults. So the community get together, we will give these courses as swamis. We will meet them individually, one-to-one, if they wish to meet us. If they require any guidance, it may be a matter of spiritual guidance, it may be something mundane as well. They may want advice in their studies or even for their business or whatever. We're not businessmen, but how to interact with people or how to concentrate in their studies, etc. So that's one-to-ones. We may also have discussions with our devotees, not just giving one-way discourses, but question-answer sessions or whatever. The community is welcome to come and worship whenever they wish, when the temple is open. We also involve the community in different activities. So like we have a sponsored walk every single year to raise funds, not just for our organization, our charitable activities, but also for a national charity, which may be doing good work related to children or health or the environment or whatever. So we try to involve our devotees in these community activities as well. We have International Women's Day, which is run exclusively by the women. That will happen this Sunday. So that's there. We have many sports activities for the different age groups as well. So it's not just all devotion and spirituality, but just getting together and doing activities together, be it sports or be it some health activity. We have health fairs as well, health screening activities, charity work, any which way that we can engage the community to do something for not just themselves, but for the wider community that they're living in.
You're talking about the charities. Can you elaborate a bit on that? What kind of charities you're supporting? Or do you have their own charities?
Yeah, so we have our own, this organization is a charity in itself. Our official name is the BAPS Swaminarayan Sanstha. And this temple was built through the donations, charitable donations of thousands of devotees and well-wishers. We have not relied on any public funding or government funding to build this temple. And even all the ongoing activities of the temple, the maintenance of this temple, the upkeep of the temple, as well as many of our other temples around the country, we rely purely on donations from the community. Our Hindu community, the Swaminarayan community, or others as well. They see the good work that one may be doing and they may feel like helping. So that's our own charity. To raise funds for our organization, also for our other charitable activities. For example, we may support some schools or hospitals in India, some special projects from time to time. We also, the community also gives donations. And we partner with one national charity every single year. So one year it may be the British Heart Foundation, maybe Diabetes UK, Breast Cancer Care. This year it's Trees for Life, may have been the National Society of Prevention of Cruelty to Children, whatever it might be. We partner with one national charity every single year to earmark some of our funds that we raise, mainly during our sponsored walk or sponsored event. So some of the funds of that event will also go to this national charity. So, but we've supported many, many charities over the years. So one national charity a year, but locally as well. So we're here in Brent, so we may support a local charity in Brent. The people in Harrow, they'll also support a local charity in Harrow. around the country, in Manchester, Birmingham, Leicester, Wellingborough, wherever we have temples or a community, we'd always try to do something to help the local community as well.
The people, the worshipper who come here. Would you say it's a Gujarati temple? You already answered this question indirectly, but would you say it's a Gujarati temple, or is
We don't say it's a Gujarati temple. It's a Hindu temple, but predominantly the people who come here to worship are Gujaratis. It's not exclusively for Gujaratis. We get many non-Gujaratis who come for certain festivals. They come for darshan of the deities. They may even come to sit in the discourses. Sometimes we have the discourses in English, so it may be easy for them to understand. Very occasionally we try to do the discourses in Hindi, which is a wider known language for people who may not be able to understand Gujarati. But because the predominant community is Gujarati, many of the discourses will take place in Gujarati. But it's not a mandir for Gujaratis. But many Gujaratis come to worship here.
What about the women?
What about the women? Yeah.
Because you were only talking about monks. Do you have nuns as well?
In our particular tradition, we do not have nuns. We just have monks. So Lord Swami taught that what we call liberation, redemption, salvation from the cycle of births and deaths, our ultimate aim is for our soul to become one with God and then remain one with God in His divine abode. That's what we call liberation. Liberation from the cycle of births and deaths, liberation from any mundane attachments. So as I explained earlier, that can happen. There's two paths. One is the path of renunciation, which some people can take, and the other path, which the majority of people take, is what we call, ours is renunciate path, is known as Tyag Ashram. The majority of people, they enter what is known as Grahast Ashram, the path of the householder or the layperson. So obviously that will either be males or females. But just as the monks can achieve liberation, the householders can achieve liberation. Just as male householders can achieve liberation, the female householders have the same right and can achieve liberation. Even though they may not be able to meet the Guru physically because of his vows, but they can still progress just as well as their male counterparts on the spiritual path. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but how can women get in touch with...
Directly they can't get in touch. Yeah, so we have some senior lay devotees. See, we are limited at the end of the day as well. There's only a few of us. So there's senior lay devotees, either males and females. So they will also be guided by them as well, if they have any one-to-one questions. But the spiritual guru, I mean, not everyone meets him face-to-face or one-to-one anyway, but through his discourses, through his life, that in itself will inspire whoever it might be me, it may be you, or any males or females, to walk forward on the spiritual path. So the inspiration of the Guru's life and the inspiration of the Guru's words.
Do you see any need for reform? You know, nowadays we talk about feminism, we talk about in other faith organizations, they talk about including priests as women, female priests.
Yeah.
Is there a discussion here as well?
It can be discussed, but it's not really discussed. Maybe when the need is so great, or when the time comes, it may be discussed, or reform might happen. But at this current place and time, it's not really been a burning issue, not at this current time. I know it is in certain denominations. Maybe they become so big or something, but we are not that big. We have a big temple, but in the grand scheme of things, we are quite small.
Can you number it a bit, like the people who come here? Could you say, are these in the thousands or 10,000s, something like that? What do you think about the festivals?
So you're talking about the temple?
Yeah,
Or
the
the whole of the UK and Europe?
No, in London.
So, okay, in London.
Mm-hmm.
So, in London, the weekly assemblies we have are on Saturdays and Sundays. So, every Saturday between 2 and say 3,000 devotees would come and sit in the assemblies in their different groups according to their age. So 2,000 to 3,000 a week on a Saturday, and on a Sunday maybe anything between 700 to 1,000. If you include the children as well, they have a Sunday school where they learn Gujarati, and they're also taught aspects of our culture, value-based classes. So anything between 700 to 1,000 on a Sunday, anything between 2,000 to 3,000 on a Saturday. That's the assemblies, the worshippers who come like someone would go to church on a Sunday. The mandir is open every single day. We have a total, probably anything between 400 to 500,000 visitors a year, so 500,000. In the first few years, we had 500,000 visitors every single year. So that works out as about maybe 10,000 every single week. So that's the visitors that come to the temple, but they may even take part in some community activities. They may take part in the worship that happens upstairs in the temple, but they may not necessarily sit in the assemblies that happen on Saturday and Sunday. If they happen to come at that time, then they're allowed to sit in the assemblies. So that's the type of numbers that we're talking about.
You mentioned that you're part of the community in Brent. Can you elaborate a bit on that? So how of course the mandirs here in Brent.
Yeah.
But what else how you're connected to the wider community here in Brent?
Okay, so the mandir is in Brent. Our spiritual leader always teaches us that give back something to the community that we live in. So getting involved in activities such as cleanup campaigns, planting trees, doing something for a local charity. Even every winter we have like clothes collections for the needy, food collections for the needy. So those sort of things we try to do to help the community within Brent. Just actually being here, without trying to sound like too pompous, but just actually being here in Brent just actually being here has contributed to the development or the growth of Brent, because a lot of people actually that wouldn't have come to this part of London have actually ended up coming here because of maybe Wembley Stadium, and two, because of the temple that was opened in 1995 here. There's also another temple on Ealing Road as well, which is also a beautiful temple, a beautiful structure and traditional like this mandir. That's also contributed to people coming to Brent. So in that way, we contribute to the local community here in Brent.
But it's the same community for the temple in Ealing Road, isn't it? It's also Swami Narayana.
No.
It's not.
No. The temple in Ealing Road is not a Swaminarayan temple. It caters for many different branches of Hinduism, and specifically sometimes it's known as a Vaishnav temple as well, but it's not specifically a Swaminarayan temple. This is a Swaminarayan temple, also a Hindu temple. As I mentioned, it's one. And we also have images of other deities. So people who may not themselves be so much affiliated to the Swaminarayan community, but they still come here for what we call darshan, to view the images. They also come here to worship. For whatever reason, they like the temple or they find peace here. So even though they may not be strict adherents of the Swaminarayan faith, they still come here to worship.
Brent is also the borough of culture this year. Is there a connection to your mandir? Because it's clearly an expression of culture as well, what you do.
Yeah, culture can take on many different forms, and we have affiliated ourselves to the initiative and trying to help in our own way. So I think the opening ceremony Rise took place sometime in January. So some of our youths, teenagers and youths also went there for the opening ceremony, sang some special verses, some Sanskrit prayers, and also took part in the opening ceremony there as well. We also hope the community comes here when we celebrate our 25 years later on this year in August. So we'll also be engaging with the local community to see how they can also contribute to our festival as well. And anything that aligns with our ethos, we'd be more than happy to participate in. So Brent is full of people from many different backgrounds and many different cultures. We are one of those cultures, and we're happy to contribute in whichever way is appropriate for the community.
Okay. Maybe the final part, we would like to talk a bit about the rules. You mentioned already the selfless service of seva. Can you elaborate on that?
So seva means service, service with the intention of pleasing God, serving without any expectation of reward, and serving the community in a selfless way. Our Guru, Pramukh Swami Maharaj, often used to teach, in the joy of others lies our own. So on a spiritual path, we may be concentrating on our own liberation, our soul, our knowledge, etc. But one of the ways to progress on the spiritual path is to serve other people, or serve in different ways. So it may be, as I mentioned, engaging yourself. There's a variety of, say, different departments to keep the whole mandir running. It may be a cleaning department, it may be a decoration department, it may be looking after the assembly, or looking after the deities, or looking after security, or parking, or the kitchen, or whatever. So our devotees try to get involved in one seva or another, whatever suits them, whatever they are inclined to. Most of the time it may be a seva that they wish to do. Sometimes they may be told that maybe this seva is better suited for you than what you are doing at the moment. If you're a doctor, then you may be better qualified to do seva with the health department. But the doctor may not want to. I'm doing this for 24 hours a day. I want to wash the utensils. I want to feed the people who don't have anything to eat or whatever. I want to serve in the kitchen, whatever it might be. So people serve in different ways, and that's their way of giving back to the community. So number one is serving the temple. And as I mentioned, that getting involved in these charity initiatives. We also have festivals from time to time, so getting involved in those festivals, because it requires a lot of organization, manpower, resources. Some may be involved in not physically doing seva, but they may be involved in admin work. They may be involved in writing, producing reports for the website, or involved in the media department, writing press releases or giving interviews. So anything that is done for the purpose of helping the temple, the organization, the community is known as seva. And our seniors teach us that that seva must be done without any expectation of reward. That I do this seva and my name will be announced or I'll be garlanded. It is not for that. It is purely an act of devotion to please God, to please the Guru. That's our definition of seva.
And are there other rules apart from that? I mean, daily rules you set up for your devotees.
Rules as in niyams?
Now, for instance, like I saw on your website, not to take any food which is impure. What does it mean?
Okay.
Kind of practical rules.
So the rules. So like I mentioned, we have these four pillars: Dharma, Gnan, Vairagya, Bhakti. Dharma is following the codes of conduct. So there's certain things you should do, and there's certain things that you shouldn't do. So for example, as a devotee, again, this will vary depending on where you are. If you're a beginner or a novice, you may find it difficult initially, but then the ideal. So what you shouldn't do as a devotee, so we have certain rules. Number one, regarding food. So as Swaminarayan Hindus, we don't eat meat. So no meat, no fish, no eggs. So when it says you shouldn't eat food that's not pure, pure food is food that is pure vegetarian food. So that's just one thing, that we should not eat non-veg food. Same way, we should not have any addictions. So we should not take alcohol, we should not take any drugs, and we should not smoke. So that's what you cannot consume. Yeah. The other rules might be no stealing, no gambling, no relations outside marriage. So these are the basic rules for a devotee, that what they shouldn't be doing. And what they should be doing. So for example, as a devotee, I'm expected to, number one, when I wake up in the morning, take a bath or take a shower. So physical purity is also important. Then offer my devotion in a special way to God. So most devotees will have a small temple in their homes, but they also have what we call a puja, their own items of worship. It may take them 15 minutes or 20 minutes. They turn the rosary. So they start the day doing that puja, so offering their devotion to God, wherever they may be. Because at home they may have a temple. If they've gone somewhere else, there may not be a temple, but they have that small, their own individual personal puja. So a devotee should bathe every morning, offer puja. He may have a temple at home, then he conducts certain rituals in that home temple, and then he continues what he's supposed to do. He has certain duties that he should fulfill. So if he's a married person with children, he has a duty to his family. So that is also known as dharma. A student has a duty to study. Someone who's working, they have a duty to serve or work, whatever. Do that job to the best of your ability. So whatever your duty is as a householder or to the community, to do that duty is in itself a religious discipline for us as well. So that's dharma, what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And then obviously that also includes coming to the assemblies once a week, coming for darshan to the temple once or twice a week, depending how far away you live, etc., etc. So they're the rules I think that you're talking about.
There's on the website that it's covered, there's a rule not to keep the company of atheists or listen to lectures given by non-believers.
Yeah.
That means you ignore the television, you ignore everything, what's happening.
No, we can listen to them. We're not so. When it says you mustn't keep the company of atheists, it means like don't be influenced by them. You don't listen to their lectures or discourses. If they're talking about physics, you can listen to that. But if they're trying to talk about, well, there wouldn't be much spiritual if if it's an atheist. But staying, because it will influence us, yeah? Whoever we listen to, we are always influenced. That doesn't mean I can't participate in an open discussion with somebody. It's not like so strict that, otherwise I wouldn't be here talking to half the people that we talk to. So there's no harm in having a fruitful discussion or a conversation. But keeping company means that, then if you become who you hang around with, or whose company you keep. So it is important on the spiritual path as well, however great you think you might be, or however learned you might be, to be careful of who you keep the company of, which is but natural. So that's why it says that you should not keep the company of atheists or someone who may not be believing in God. That doesn't mean you can't engage in simple conversation with them or discussions, but not keeping their company or not being influenced by them. That's what it's trying to say.
What is your idea about interfaith conversation with other faiths here in London?
Yeah, so we are taught that we respect all religions. We respect all beliefs and practices if they are deemed, they don't have to fall into the Swaminarayan way, but like some practices may be evil or wrong. We don't respect those practices.
Like what?
Say someone is eating meat, for example, and we don't eat meat. Then we can't condone that practice. We can respect the person, we can respect the faith, but we don't accept everything that then the faith might be teaching you,
Sure.
For example. So what we are taught, or what our Guruji teaches us, and he's met the faith leaders of all the major faiths, is that you pick out the good from every faith. Or even if someone doesn't believe in God, that doesn't mean that person cannot be good. So you'd look at the good in everyone and try to imbibe that into your lives. You look at the good in different faiths or different belief systems, and if it's applicable, then also try to emulate that. There's nothing wrong in that. So learning from others, engaging in dialogue, discussing with others is fine. Not for the sake of argument, not to say that your religion is, my religion is better than yours, or my God is better than yours. Not to get involved in those sort of arguments. You have your religion, we respect that. What can we learn from each other? That's the important thing. How can we work together to, for the common, for the greater good, so that the whole community can benefit? That is where we engage in interfaith dialogue.
Are you actively promoting this, or are you participating in some interfaith dialogue?
From time to time, for example, every single year there's an interfaith week. So we would try to we would try to arrange some event at that time. We would call people from different faiths and try to do some event together. So maybe sometimes that happens during Interfaith Week in November every single year. When we have some of our major festivals, or for example, when our spiritual leader visits, we would invite people from different faiths as well to come. Why don't you experience what's happening, the festivities? So we invite people. If there is a function elsewhere in which our presence may be required, then we would also send our devotees to also engage in that dialogue. And sometimes when our senior Swamis come from India, Then we may also arrange visits to different places like St. Paul's Cathedral, Westminster Abbey, or wherever. Been to a Jewish synagogue as well. And Pramukh Swami, the former guru, he has met the Archbishop of Canterbury. He has met the chief rabbis when he went to Israel. He's met Muslim imams as well, and like he's met Sikh gurus. So engaging in dialogue, just meeting. He's spoken at the UN Millennium Peace Summit, and he spoke about the importance of world religions and each religion respecting each other, and everyone learning from each other to ensure that the people that we are trying to preach to, they also develop such values in their lives.
Would you also do, is there also some contact, do you have contacts with, like in Ealing Road, we mentioned already this road, there's the Sada Mandir, then there's a mosque is there, and most of them have mainly South Asian devotees. Are you in contact with local?
We're not so much in contact with the mosque, but with Ealing Road Temple, we are quite affiliated. We go there to meet their devotees. Our Guru, when he came last time, Mahant Swami Maharaj in 2017, he went to the temple in Ealing Road. They invited him. The ISKCON temple in Watford, Bhaktivedanta Manor, Mahant Swami Maharaj, he also visited in 2017 as well. And they also visit here on special occasions as well. So with other Hindu organizations, it's an understanding that sometimes we go there and sometimes they'll come here. If we have a very major festival, then we'll also invite them here. So when we have our New Year's festival every year, the Diwali Ankut festival, then all these faith leaders, community leaders will also be invited to the festival.
But you don't have the contact with the churches or mosques or synagogues here in the area?
We do. It's probably not on a very frequent basis, but our leaders are in touch with a couple of synagogues in, well, I don't know if they're in Brent, they may be further on near Finchley or whatever. Even the mosques, Golders Green, I think. But even like a couple of the mosques, our interfaith leaders are in touch with them as well. And same with the Archbishop of Canterbury has come here, Cardinal has come here, we've had the Pope's representative come here, I think in 2013 or 14. So wherever the opportunity arises, there was a cricket team that came from the Vatican a couple of 2 or 3 years ago. They came to London for a match, so they came to the temple. They're all Christians, but they came here. I mean, some of them were Indian as well, but they all came to the temple here. We met them. So we're open. People may come here, we may go there as well.
Talking a little bit wider about the community, like there's a well-known Gujarati called Pale Patel. He's a young Pale Patel. He's a young actor, a Gujarati actor. He's based in Brent. He's quite famous, you know him, huh?
Yeah. I don't think the older generation will know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, he has recently has done a film for the BBC, with the BBC, and he was asking his own community, Gujaratis, about castes. And he concluded, he found out that most of the Gujaratis marry along the caste lines. Would you promote it from the temple, to marry along the caste lines, or is it a big issue for you?
It's not an issue at all, in my opinion. We don't promote it. People can get married to whoever they are compatible with. That may be a person of the same caste, it may be a person of the same religion, a person from the same background, the same color, or whatever, or different. It's entirely up to them. So while people would be affiliated and they may know each other's families, or or they may have more things in common, and they happen to get married along those caste lines or culture lines. That's up to them, because there's probably more things in common, and they're probably more compatible. But it's not something at all that we say, okay, you must get married along these lines. What we do expect is you get married to someone who is compatible, especially with your religious beliefs, because then it may cause friction, unnecessary friction. So you don't want people fighting and going one way and this way, yeah? So what we do say is, like, you find someone who's compatible, that you can also practice your beliefs, they can also practice their beliefs, you have things in common, and then you can have a happy life together. Otherwise, there's so many things not in common, then it makes life very, very difficult. And as we often hear, like, an Indian marriage is like, it's not just a marriage between two people, it's a marriage between two families or two extended families. So it's important to get on with the rest of your families as well. It's not just like two people and they do what they want and, and then they're away from their families or whatever. And we have lots of examples. We have people who are Hindus marrying even non-Hindus. It doesn't matter, as long as they are sympathetic to your beliefs and have certain values and follow certain principles. Yeah.
Maybe a final word about the future of this temple, your own role in the temple here. What you would like to wish, or what is your something maybe we have not discussed at all, What is your inner wish?
Our wish is our Guru Pramukh Sai Maharaj, he inspired the building of this mandir in at that time a foreign land, because most of our temples were built in India. But his purpose was that people imbibe values, especially spiritual values, in their lives to ensure that they become happy and others around them, their family, their friends, relatives, also become happy. So that was the sole purpose. This mandir is supposed to inspire us to a higher way of living. So our wish would be and when this temple was built, it's made out of stone. So physically, Pramukh Swami Maharaj said that this temple should last 1,000 years, physically. But his wish was like, whoever comes to the mandir must be inspired to a higher way of living. So our wish is, especially our youngsters, who may be not so much understanding of our culture, of our religious belief system or our faith, that they remain connected to this mandir, so that they can also continue to imbibe the cultural, spiritual, moral values that have been passed on from their parents or grandparents or whatever. So mandir would the temple itself would be an inspiration for people to lead a pure, moral, spiritual life, so they can help themselves on the spiritual path and also help the wider community as well. That was the purpose why this mandir, or any mandir in our faith, is actually created or built.
And do you see importance for the wider society as well? Like today, as you know, as we all know, the world is quite a difficult place nowadays. It's a lot of division in the world, any country. And do you think there's also a role for the mandir in changing this, or is it?
Yeah, the mandir.
Is it very personal only?
No. It's not just for personal benefit. So again, our Pramukh Sai Maharaj, our current Guru Mahant Sai Maharaj, continuously emphasize that religion is not just for our personal self, but it's for, number one, our own family, When the family breaks up, the community breaks up. So our family unit must be very, very, very strong. So whatever relationship between, the couple, or with their children, or husband and wife with their parents or in-laws or whatever, the family unit, the stronger the family unit, the stronger the community that we live in. So there's a strong emphasis on family harmony, family unity, through being inspired when they come to the mandir, but also general things like eating together, putting away all your gadgets and sitting together, away from any distractions. So we emphasize those things like almost on a weekly basis, because as you mentioned, that society, there's a lot of challenges at the moment, environmental, social media, mental health, whatever it might be. So whatever we can do to help ourselves and help our families, that's something that needs to be encouraged to each and every single person that comes here. So it forms a major part of our teachings as well, that ensure harmony in the family, and then you'll ensure harmony in the community that you live in. Yeah. So let me just tell you a little bit about the history of this temple. So this temple was opened in 1995 by His Holiness Pramukh Sai Maharaj, who was then the spiritual leader of the BAPS Swaminarayan organization. So Pramukh Sai Maharaj, he had a vision which was given to him by his guru Yogiji Maharaj in 1970. So in the 1960s and early 1970s, a lot of Gujaratis, they came from East Africa to UK and also specifically to London. So many of the Indians, some may have come directly to this country, but many Indians went to East Africa, mainly to Kenya, Tanzania and Uganda. But late 1960s and early 70s, many of them started migrating to England. So our late Guru, Yogiji Maharaj, he actually came to London in 1970. It was a very small community of Swaminarayans, very small. And actually Yogiji Maharaj, he was 78 at the time, his health was not good. He had gone to Africa just for a couple of months, but then he was like persuaded by the devotees. There was a few devotees here in London to come to London. He was not keen at all to come to London because his health was not good, and he thought it would be very cold here as well. England weather, British weather. But he came in 1970. He said, look, why don't you buy a location, a place for a mandir, a temple. Devotees had very few means at that time and very small in number. But they got together, they bought a disused church in Islington, and Yogiji Maharaj, he opened that temple in Islington. It was probably smaller than where we're sitting at the moment. It's a very small place. And there was a handful of devotees, probably 20 to 30 devotees, who were belonging to the Swaminarayan community at that time. Yogiji Maharaj in 1970, he said that this temple will soon become too small for you. People wouldn't believe it, that why should it become too small, it's too big at the moment. And he said that a traditional temple will be made here in London in the future. It's the wish of Lord Swaminarayan. So he gave those blessings. Yogiji Maharaj went back to India. He passed away a few months later. So his successor, His Holiness Pramukh Sai Maharaj, remembering these words of Yogiji Maharaj, he made efforts that maybe in the future, let's see if we can find a suitable place to make a traditional temple like this. This was way back in 1971, 1972, before the Exodus. And then we all know, history tells us that the Ugandan Exodus happened in 1972, and thousands, literally thousands of East Africans from Uganda, also Kenya, also Tanzania, migrated to London. From a religious or spiritual perspective, the temple in Islington became way too small to cater for all the people who came, many of whom were actually devotees of the Swaminarayan faith. And some may have just been Gujaratis or Hindus who were looking for a place to worship or looking for a temple. There weren't many temples in London at that time. So since that time, Pramukh Sai Maharaj, he inspired the devotees, encouraged the devotees, look for a place, look for a place, look for a place. And then eventually a place was found in 1980, just across the road here in Neasden, northwest London, in the borough of Brent. Incidentally, when Yogiji Maharaj came in 1970, he actually stayed in Neasden in Brent. In Dollis Hill he stayed. So that just happens to be a coincidence, but that's how our Guru stayed in Brent in 1970. We found a place across the road in 1980. It was opened in 1982. And then search started for premises for a traditional temple. The other temple was a simple temple, but not a traditional stone temple. But after looking at many different sites, this site came up for sale, I think in 1989 or 1990. It was acquired, and with the permission of the local council, with the blessings of our gurus and swamis, this temple, the work commenced in 1992, completed in 1995. So Brent became home to this traditional temple. It was the first traditional temple probably outside India, totally traditional temple built of, which is currently, I know we've had temples in the past in Cambodia or whatever, but at least in the Western world, made of stone, made of marble, made according to the what we call the Shilpa Sastras, the texts which describe how a temple should be built. So you have the marble and stone temple on one side, and you have the wooden Haveli, what we call the complex. Haveli is a type of architecture that's been adopted for the assembly hall and the entrance to the mandir complex. So this traditional mandir and the Haveli was built in a period of 2.5 to 3 years, from 1992 to 1995. And on the 20th of August 1995, His Holiness Pramukh Sai Maharaj, he opened this BAPSG Swaminarayan Mandir, the first traditional mandir of its kind. And we're celebrating 25 years of that temple this year to mark the opening of the temple. It's a landmark for us. It's a special time for us as well that we're celebrating this festival. And we want the whole of Brent, the whole of London to be part of our celebrations as well. To celebrate what the mandir has given to the community, to also thank the community for what they've given to the temple and the organization as well. Because without the support of the community, we would not be able to organize or run the activities that we do at the moment without their support.
It's very impressive, you know, the carving of the marble and the wood. Can you say something to that? Because it's so, yeah, it's the most outstanding feature of the temple in a way.
Carvings are based on different stories that may be there in the scriptures, and it's an art that has been passed down from many generations. So it was Pramukh Swami Maharaj's wish that we hand carve and use traditional carvings for this particular temple or mandir here in London. So we've used Bulgarian stone. There were many materials that were tested. Which one would deem to be the most suitable for this particular environment? Because you have the harsh climate, you have rain, you have snow, you have cold, you have a little bit of heat sometimes. And a lot of materials were tested. It wasn't like, okay, we've used, and it's the first time I think Bulgarian limestone has been used in any of our temples, our Swaminarayan temples. Because normally we use like pink sandstone or other limestone. But Bulgarian limestone was acquired from the quarries in Bulgaria, is all sent to India for carving. The marble from Italy, Carrara marble, which has been used in the past in some temples, that was also sent to India. And a lot of the marble you see is also Indian marble. That was already in India. Everything was crafted in India by specialist craftsmen, hand carved, and then everything was transported to London. And everything, I think there was something like 26,000 different pieces, and everything was assembled here in London itself, with the help of craftsmen who had come from India at the time as well, and also the help of many of our volunteers. There were about 3,000 volunteers at that time who had contributed to the making of this temple. So it was actually relied on the donations from the local community, and a lot of saving was also made because the volunteers themselves would actually polish the marble, help unpack the crates, so whatever they could do on a voluntary basis they would do. So through the support of the volunteers, 3,000 men and women of all ages, this temple came about in 1995. The amazing thing, it came together in, 2.5 years. Started in end of 1992, opened in August 1995. And you can see the temple today. There are some challenges trying to look after the temple in the British climate, but God inspires all of us and He finds a way. And the devotees also spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, also trying to make sure that the mandir is looked after. The devotees that come to pray, to worship, they're looked after. And the many visitors that come, for example, you may have seen some of the school groups as well. The groups that come, the visitors that come from many countries around the world, they're also looked after.
Mm-hmm. And you also mentioned the wooden carving and the wood. Can you talk about the wood as well?
Yeah, okay. So the Haveli we see on this side for the cultural complex. Haveli is a type of architecture based on wooden materials. And it's something that was prevalent many years ago, probably around 200 years ago in Gujarat and maybe other parts of India as well. So the architects that were chosen for this project, they actually went to India, they studied many temple complexes, many different types of architecture. And they also saw that this would be quite suited to the temple here in London. It was also suggested by some of our Swamis as well, and eventually the decision was taken to have this wooden architecture in the Haveli fashion. So they've used British oak and Burma teak, and that's been sourced from special farms. So however many trees are cut, that many trees are planted to make sure that there's no major impact on the environment. So that's the wood that has been used, that you can see all around here, around the cultural complex. Just adds to the beauty of the traditional temple. Huh? Yeah. Chokri Mali ke Namali? Are you looking? Which is?